Hey everyone, welcome back to the Doug and Racecraft YouTube channel. On this episode, it's out with the old and in with the new. Okay there everyone, I just realized in the last video I didn't introduce the lovely co-host that I had that episode. So we're just going to take a quick second to introduce who this is and how I know who she is.
I'm surprised no one knows who I am, honestly.
How are we doing today, miss?
I'm doing fine, how are you?
What's your name?
Hannah.
Hannah.
Montana.
Very nice to meet you, Hannah Montana. Of what relation are you to me?
It's hard. It's hard to pick
Just
one word.
Say it.
Significant other, boyfriend,
Okay.
whatever you want to call it.
And it would, I guess it could be said that because of you, I have this lovely money pit in my life. Could that be said?
I suppose so. I guess that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. It just worked out that way, that I was able to bless you with this.
Very true, very true. So, as I said before, I got the car from Hannah's uncle. Chris is Hannah's uncle on her mom's side. So, that's how I ended up with this car. That's who she is. I just figured I'd give her a quick introduction before we get into this video. Ta-da! All right, everyone, we got the new motor in the shop. We're gonna start taking it apart just far enough to put the gaskets in. We're not gonna take the rotating assembly apart. Just gonna take the heads off just to inspect what's underneath. I got this motor from Randy, picked it up this morning. Found out the other motor was bad last night, just for a little timeline for you guys. Randy said he had the driver's side head off. Everything looked fine, just to make sure there was no rust in any of the cylinders. So we're gonna take the passenger side head off now, just to inspect it, make sure everything's good. Put new head gaskets in it, throw it together, and give it a coat of paint. All right, so upon initial inspection, everything looks fine. Got a little bit of carbon on the cylinders, nothing too serious. Got a little bit of a lip on the cylinders, just from the carbon buildup, not from the piston rings wearing the cylinders out. So that's a good sign. We'll rotate it over a little bit. Still got some cross hatching in the cylinders, which is really good to see. The head gasket looks pretty okay. A couple holes plugged up. Might have gotten through right there. I don't think so though. Looks pretty good. At the bottom side of the cylinder head here, everything here looks fine. No rust in any of the cylinders that you can see. Everything looks nice and uniform, which is exactly what you want to see. These are E7 cylinder heads, nothing special, just what came in Mustangs from 87 to 95. All right, so I like to spray everything down with a little bit of WD-40 just to lubricate it. All we're gonna do is use a nice brand new razor blade to scrape some of this stuff off, like the rings left behind from the head gaskets and everything like that. These heads were off at some point before, if I had to guess, just because I know that the factory head gaskets didn't have these nice sealing rings on them. They were just flat gaskets from what I remember. Okay, so we got the motor cleaned up for the most part, wire wheeled all the grease off of it. Obviously there's still a little bit of residual stuff left. The cylinders all look pretty good, so we're gonna continue on. We're gonna get it cleaned up and then we're gonna paint it. I'm gonna use a little bit of super clean just to show you guys how well this stuff works. Like I said, this is not a paid endorsement. They just sent me some stuff and asked me to tell you guys what I think about it, so let's just give it a shot and see how it works out. So the best way to use this stuff that I found is you wanna have whatever you're applying it to as clean and as dry as you can to begin with. The most common misconception with degreasers is that they will take off the thick grease, and whilst they might, I haven't tried that, but the problem with it is they aren't designed for that. They're designed to just get rid of grease, not built up grease. So you want to get it as clean as you can first and then use the degreaser to actually degrease everything and get it down to the bare metal or whatever it is that you're working on. So you want it as cool and dry as you can, and then you want to apply evenly. Let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes. Do not let it dry. If it dries, it'll leave behind a residue that's going to be almost impossible to get off without using some sort of harsh chemical to get off. So we're gonna go ahead and spray it on here. We'll let it sit for a little bit and then we'll come back and start scrubbing. Is this how you want to be seen on YouTube, Hannah? All right, guys, so we got the block all cleaned up with the Super Clean. It actually did an amazing job. As you can see here, got it down to the cast iron, got a lot of the rust out and stuff off. Didn't do a whole lot of scrubbing. Got a lot of the grease off, obviously, that's what we're after, mainly using it just as a degreaser. They say you're supposed to use water to rinse it off. Obviously, this is a situation where I can't do that. I don't want to risk the block starting to rust or anything like that. So we're just gonna rub it down, hit it with a little bit of wax and grease remover just before we put a coat of paint on it. All right, there you guys, we're back. It's the next day. Got the motor cleaned up, pretty much painted already. Got a couple coats of paint on it. The other cylinder head's just sitting right there. Super clean, degreased the block very well. I was very surprised, actually. Like I said, very surprising. Actually very impressed with the Super Clean. It's doing a very good job. The paint that I used, I know I'm gonna catch some hell for this, but I honestly don't really care. I ended up using Van Sickle implement paint for tractors and things like that. This is old Ford Gray from 65 and older for the 9N, 8N, and 2N tractors. This is actually the same paint that we used on the 8N tractor that you saw earlier in the video to unload the motor. My dad restored that tractor in 1998, so it's been well over 20 years and that paint's holding up like brand new yet. So you can say all you want about what paint that should have been used, whatever, but this is the best stuff that you can get. The paint on that tractor's lasted for 20 plus years. Hot, cold, sat outside nearly every one of those days. It's been beat on in the 100-degree heat, and it's sat all winter through minus, 20 or 30 degrees, however cold it's gotten. Always sat outside, and the paint's held up amazing. So this is the same kind of paint we use on my dad's engine, and it's holding up fine. So yeah, that's what we ended up using. What I'm doing now, waiting for the paint to dry, I'm starting to clean up the valve covers a little bit. These are original valve covers that came off the other engine. As you can see, I got the one very well cleaned up. This is what this one looked like before I started it. I still used the Super Clean. Just used a couple nylon brushes that I got from Harbor Freight. Like I said, this stuff works amazingly well. I couldn't be more impressed with it. So definitely made a believer out of me. The magic of editing. Bam! Here's what it ends up looking like. This isn't a whole lot of scrubbing. This took me probably 15 minutes worth of scrubbing just because of the tight areas and things like that. Like I said, use nylon brushes. Didn't want to use anything stiffer because I was also cleaning the outside. And I didn't want to leave any scratches behind because I'm planning on leaving these bare aluminum. So this one arguably came out better than the first one did. Like I said, just use some Super Clean as directed. The only thing I didn't do is I didn't rinse it after the fact like they say you're supposed to. I just don't have running water up here, so otherwise I would. I'm assuming if you rinsed it off, it'd work even better. It'd take even a lot more stuff with it. So that's my general opinion on the Super Clean. I think this stuff actually works really well. Like I said, very surprised by it. So we're gonna just keep using it, I think. Doesn't smell nearly as harsh as brake clean or carb cleaner does, and it's not nearly as aggressive in the sense that you can use it on plastics and things like that without eating the plastic up. So it's definitely made a believer out of me, so I think we're gonna start using Super Clean a lot more often around here. All right, there you guys, it's the next day. I got the paint dried. I went to O'Reilly's and got myself a milling standard volume oil pump. So I got a new timing set and a new camshaft. I'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek at that camshaft. So let's get her turned back over. We'll put the cam in it, get the timing cover on it, and then we'll put the pan on. Okay, so we got the camshaft parts here. And I'm going with Comp Cam's lifter kit. This is Comp Cam's 280H Magnum camshaft. This is the exact same cam that I had in the King Cobra when I had a small block in that, and I love the way this cam sound. I've actually waited to get another small block car just so I could use this cam again. That cam in a stock 302 high output roller motor went 1369 at 101 miles an hour. Which is pretty much the exact same combination we're gonna have here with this motor. It's a 88 high output 302 motor, originally roller block, now it's gonna be a flat tappet cam. T5 and a 8.8 with 355s in it. So literally almost like an identical combination to what I had in the King Cobra at the time. So I'm really excited. I mean, that car was a blast to drive. So may not be fast by today's standards, but it's gonna do is pretty good. Comp Cam's lifters, like I said, Comp Cam's camshaft, and the Cloy's double roller timing set. Pretty standard installation. Okay, we got the camshaft in. I cleaned the head surfaces up, got the head gaskets on. The one thing I will say, if you're not familiar with small block Ford head gaskets, they are orientation specific, but they're not side specific. They are the same part number for each side for the head gasket, but they have to be oriented specially. This one says front on it, and they both say front on the front side that's supposed to be front, because you can put these on backwards. It'll run fine, still seal, but as you can see here, the difference is the reason this side is the front is because the two pockets here for the coolant, the head gasket blocks it in the front, because if you put this on backwards, what's going to happen is the coolant's going to come into the motor and it's just going to go right through these holes and right out the thermostat. And it's not going to cool the motor down. That's why it has to be on the other way. So make sure you put this on the right way. Put it on like that, so the coolant has to go through the block, back up, through the head, and out. I ended up getting the wrong timing set. The timing set that I got was for a 2-piece front eccentric, whereas this motor had a 1-piece front eccentric. This is what a 1-piece one looks like, just 1 piece of thick stamped steel, whereas this one has an inner and an outer. This ring here spins independently of the inside, but it sits inside this little cup. For whatever reason, I'm pretty sure the 2-piece eccentrics were later engines and the 1-piece eccentrics were earlier engines. I want to say pre-80 something, or I don't remember offhand. But for some reason, the motor that came out of my car, which was made in May of 1982, had a 1-piece eccentric, but the 2-piece eccentric came from the motor that came from my dad's car, my dad's 82 GT, which was made in February of 1982. So I'm not really sure what the deal was there, but I ended up having the right eccentric anyway, so that worked out pretty good. One thing I didn't mention when I put the oil pump on was I like to take the bottom cover off and pour a little bit of oil in there just so that you're not starting the engine or priming the system on a dry pump. Helps the pumps live a little bit longer, so it's just a good practice. The camshaft, as I said before, was Comp Cam's 280H Magnum camshaft. It's a single pattern cam, 110 degree lobe separation angle, 280 degrees of advertised duration, and 230 degrees of duration at 50 thousandths tappet lift. So next thing is we're gonna get the heads on. I have new head bolts coming in the morning. Okay there you guys, it's been a couple days. Been waiting for most of the stuff to come from Summit. Apparently overnight shipping doesn't mean overnight anymore. So I got the rest of the bolts and everything we need to finish up the motor. We got some head bolts, valve cover studs, intake manifold bolts, pressure plate bolts, and then some fuel fittings because I'm running new fuel lines since I have the drivetrain and everything out of the car. I think that this is the last of the stuff I needed to finish the car, so I should have everything now, so now it's just buckling down and getting the work done. The motor's ready to have the heads put on. I was waiting for the head bolts to get here to do that. So let's get the cylinder heads on and we'll keep going. Okay, so I'm getting the head bolts ready to put in. The head bolts come with these washers that are ARP specific. Other companies may do this, but I'm not sure. I know Trick Flow's bolts are like this, but it's because they're ARP bolts that are rebranded as Trick Flow's. They have a shoulder on the inside here. So as you can see on the inside diameter there's a bevel or a chamfer. And on the other side, there's not. So it sits on here like this so that the washer sits flush up against the head. If you put it on the other way, the washer stands off from the bolt like this. There's a little gap in between there. You don't want that. They bevel the inside here so that the fastener doesn't get bound up and give you a false torque reading on because there's a slight bevel or radius on the inside where the bolt head meets the actual shank of the bolt. So they do that so that you're actually getting the torque reading of the bolt going into the head or whatever you're using these bolts for, because they make bolts for everything. They also give you assembly lube that you put underneath the head and underneath the washer so that, like I said, so you're getting the actual torque reading from the material that you're torquing into and other things aren't skewing that number. So that's just one thing to keep in mind when you're doing this. Okay, so another thing worth noting with the small block Ford with the high output motors is that the head bolts go into cooling jackets. So you need to put a little bit of Teflon tape or Teflon paste on the threads so that the coolant won't leak out of the threads when you put the head bolts in. We end up using Teflon paste. Teflon paste works the best for me. Put it on the threads. Don't be conservative with it because this is not something you want to do twice. Alright, so we got thread sealing on all the head bolts. Now we're getting ready to torque those down. I like using my trusty old reliable beam style foot-pound torque wrench. These ARPs use a 12-point half-inch socket. The instructions say to torque them in 3 steps, 3 equal steps, up to 70 foot-pounds being the final step. So I'm going to do them in 30 foot-pounds, 50 foot-pounds, and 70 foot-pounds. Okay, so now that we got the heads torqued down, the next thing that you ought to do is get your rocker arms ready. I ended up reusing the push rods and the rocker arms from the old motor. Some of you might be saying, Sean, I thought this was a roller motor. It was originally. As you can tell by the bosses here, just because it's a triple Y or a triple X block, like this one says, does not mean necessarily that it's a roller motor, because those motors also came in F-150s and some of those had flat tappet cams. Such as the motor that came out of this car, that's a triple X block, but it is not a roller. So you are able to use a flat tappet cam inside of a roller block. There's no problems with that. Nothing's different besides the lifter bosses are taller for a roller block because the roller lifters are taller than a flat tappet lifter. But if you use the push rods from a flat tappet cam block, they will work with a flat tappet cam, flat tappet lifters in a roller block. You just have to match the push rods to the lifters. No big deal. Like I said, we had to reuse these rocker arms because this motor didn't come with any. Spent probably about an hour or so cleaning these up because they were pretty dirty. They had a bunch of sludge and stuff on them, things like that. I didn't say before, but per the Comp Cam's installation instructions, they say do not pre-submerge the lifters. You can pre-lube the motor, but they say explicitly do not pre-soak the lifter. Okay, everyone, so we got the valve covers back on. These are the original valve covers that came off this car. They still have the stickers or the decals on both sides for the calibration and whatever this stuff means. Not too hip on this stuff, so I'm not entirely sure. Same way on this side, so there's a decal on it. These actually cleaned up really well. I showed you guys cleaning these up with the Super Clean. Did a phenomenal job. Didn't sandblast these at all. Didn't really have to. I kind of wanted to paint them gray to match the engine and then sand the fins like I did on my dad's car. You guys will see that eventually. But I didn't want to get rid of these decals. I didn't want to mask them off either. So what's probably going to end up happening, we'll put these on my dad's car because he likes the originality stuff. And I'll take the valve covers on his because his car has these same valve covers on it. I'll take his, paint them gray because his are blue right now, and then sand the fins down and it'll look perfect. So like I said, used ARP bullet nose studs. Got the valve covers back on, so we're going to flip it over. Put the pan on. Now that we got the timing cover ready, I did that off camera. It was just a lot of monotonous stuff that you've already seen before. Okay, so we got the motor flipped over. I got the timing cover loosely bolted on. You should do, especially with any motor that has a gasketed surface, meaning another gasketed surface, you should use a little bit of silicone. I have the timing cover loose, so it'll move back and forth right now, so you can get it in that joint on both sides, and then it'll also meet the oil pan gasket. I did that on the back as well because this is a main cap and that's a joint. So it's best to put some sealer in that so it doesn't want to leak in the got ourselves a nice one-piece pan gasket. So we'll get that put on and we'll check back in after that. All right, so we got the pan on. One thing you want to be sure of when you put the pan on is you want to leave the timing cover a little bit loose, because if you tighten the timing cover down and it's not perfectly level with the block here, if it's, say it's hanging shy, you know, even a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch, that's going to make the pan have to contort down to get it to seal. So I like to tighten the pan to the timing cover first and tighten the pan all the way around and then tighten the timing cover in. So then that way you know the pan pulls it up where it wants to be and then you can drive the timing cover in. Just something to keep in mind. So we got the pan on, as I said. So we'll get her flipped back over. That's pretty much it for the motor, but let's get it flipped back over and wrap this up. Okay there, everyone, as you can see, we got the motor finished up. Put some of the accessories on. I just have the intake manifold loosely bolted down just so we could get a preview at the finished product. Came out very, very nice. I'm actually pretty happy with how it came out. But as you can see, she's a pretty clean unit. Gave her the old rattle can rebuild, if you will. So that's gonna do it for this video, guys. As you can see, we got a lot done. Got this motor basically from rags to riches. Obviously, my life would be a lot easier if I bought stuff new, but the amount of money that I've saved just so far reusing the stuff that I have or stuff that's readily available that is secondhand, you save that money and then you can apply it to other things where you need it. Make sure if you did like this video, you leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. About 75% of my viewers aren't subscribed to my channel, so if you do like that content, please do subscribe. It really does help me get more exposure on my videos, get more people watching these, and then we can expand the channel and keep it growing so I can come up with more good content for you guys. In the next video, we're gonna put the rear end in the car. Got a new gas tank and everything, so we'll run the new fuel lines for that. We'll throw the motor back in the car and we should get her fired up. It's currently Thursday and I wanna have it running by the end of the weekend. So this next video might be a long one, might be a two-parter, we'll see. Mark my words, by the end of the next video, this car is gonna be running again. So that's gonna do it for this video, guys. Y'all take care now.